Welcome back to the Celtics Nation Rise account. I'm Griffin Aldridge. Alongside me is Seamus Zaralingo, and we got some breaking news. The Boston Celtics have signed Luka Garza to a 2-year, $5.5 million deal that just broke earlier. And it's funny because I was telling Seamus this earlier too. I'm scrolling, we did the whole live over there on Celtics Talk Weekly Live, CTW Live, and I just got off because I was going to a barbecue, and I get the breaking news about Luka Garza, and I'm like, oh, probably signed an extension, re-signed, with the Timberwolves, something like that. And then I see Boston Celtics, and I'm like, wow, that was not expected. It definitely caught me off guard for sure. But Seamus, you want to break down this deal with the Boston Celtics? We now have a new member on the team.
Well, of course, this is per Sham Sharania. Free agent center Luka Garza has agreed to a 2-year, $5.5 million fully guaranteed deal with the Boston Celtics, sources tell ESPN. The Celtics negotiated the new deal with Garza's representatives Mark Bartelstein and Kieran Pillar of Priority Sports tonight. So Luka Garza on his way to the Boston Celtics from the Minnesota Timberwolves, where he spent the last 3 seasons. Spent his rookie season in Detroit with the Pistons. However, Luka Garza now adds another team to his resume in the Boston Celtics. And this is a 2-year, $5.5 million fully guaranteed deal, and it is a minimum contract for Luka Garza. So Luka Garza entering the Celtics building under a minimum contract. So we talk about minimum bigs, right? Well, what type of bigs could the Celtics sign out there? Players could the Celtics sign for the minimum deal, right? Well, Luka Garza seems to be the first domino to fall, if not the only one.
Yeah, totally. And you look at Luka Garza again. You already said it, Seamus. He's not very experienced when it comes to the NBA. Obviously, you said he spent a lot of time with Detroit and the Motor City Cruise, and then he spent a lot of time with the Iowa Wolves as well. Hasn't got a lot of NBA time, but again, I think we could look back on a guy that we just lost to, Luke Kornet. We had to develop him. We developed him through the main Celtics, brought him up. This could be another guy in Luka Garza where we develop him. And I don't think it'll be the main route. I really don't. I feel like his time in the G League has come to an end. I feel like
He
they're going to.
seems like a player that's too good for the G League, but not good enough to break an NBA rotation yet.
Yet
Yet.
is the key word. Yet is the key word right there because I like Luka Garza. Okay, I think and I agree with you, Seamus. I feel like Luka Garza is kind of a guy. You said this earlier on CTW Live too. He's a guy that you want as the 15th man on a roster, not the number one or two option. And that's where the Celtics are kind of at. You look at the depth chart with the center, he could very well as start for the Celtics right now. The center depth is Luka Garza, Namias Keita, Xavier Tillman, and Amari Williams. That's very thin right now. So and I look at all those guys and I think they're all pretty much equal right now too. I feel like they're all kind of similar playing style. It's like whoever you toss out there, it's like, all right, one of the guys could have done better. Maybe Amari Williams. You're not going to do that because he's a rookie.
Well,
Totally
he's going to be
could.
a two-way guy. A
Yeah, he'll
two-way
be.
guy, pick 46. He's going to be
Yeah.
up there in Maine with you, Griffin.
Oh, totally. He will. But again, I was talking with Daniel. Amari Williams could be a guy who halfway through the season could see some time for the Celtics. This year is really a development year and retooling to work with Jason Tatum. And I'm gonna say this: you might have mixed thoughts on that, but Luka Garza, this is a perfect situation from Boston, in my opinion, because Luka Garza, he's a guy where, and you and Franco said this earlier, with Nas Reed and Rudy Gobert, he wasn't gonna get the time that he deserved playing time with the Timberwolves. It's just he wasn't. Now with the Celtics, he's going to get a lot of time and he could really develop, and this could really spark something. Obviously, you said he's not the youngest player, he's 26 years old. should be in his prime. But this could really spark something. And you said it again earlier too, Seamus, that the Boston Celtics are really good at developing players. And Luka Garza, I look at him and I'm like, wow, this could seriously be one of those players that we develop. Now, where's the ceiling with him, though? That's what we have to say. Could he potentially be like a Rudy Gobert? I don't know. Could he potentially be like a Luke Kornet? I believe so. But what are your thoughts, Seamus? Do you like this signing for the Boston Celtics? I know
Well,
you have mixed thoughts.
well, to me, Luka Garza, it's not a move that's going to it's not a contract that's going to move the needle for the Celtics. It's not a player that's going to move the needle for the Celtics in any immediate form whatsoever. And this is, I don't want to say a project signing, but if you look at the career progression between Luke Cornett and Luka Garza, what we're hoping with Luka Garza here, as we pull it up on screen, Darko, the career DPM progression between Luke Cornett and Luka Garza. Luka Garza, the red line, Luke Cornett, the blue line. You see the blue line shot up into the air. And that's around the time in which Luke Cornett became a Boston Celtic. That blue line shoots up into the air, and Luke Cornett became an efficient player, a valuable player in the NBA. However, you look at the red and blue line in relevance with each other, they're pretty close. If you look at the data up to this
And can
point in
I say,
time,
Jameis,
Luke Cornett at the same point in his career was at the same mark of Luka Garza, nearly maybe a little bit above there, but around the same mark. Both negative players, I'll say that. Both negative
definitely.
players. However, you see once Luke Cornett, when that spikes up, that blue line spikes up, that's when Luke Cornett starts contributing for the Boston Celtics. And what the Celtics are hoping for right now is Luka Garza takes that red line, takes the same path as that blue line. There's no guarantee that happens up to this point. However, that's what the Celtics are hoping for in Luka Garza. Not necessarily a project player, but somebody who can come in. Maybe he's the fourth big, right? I'm gonna say he's probably gonna be your third or fourth big. And right now, well, you look at him, he's maybe our first big guy right now, but a little rough, right? The big man rotation is a little rough right now for the Celtics. We'll have to see what the how many more moves are on the way. But Luka Garza, he'd be nice as a third, fourth big guy, and in time, right, becoming that Luke Cornett level of producer at the big man position. He's going to do it in a very different way. He's a little bit more agile than a Luke Cornett. A little, I would say, a little smaller. He's
I,
not as much of
yeah,
a big when it comes to rebounding and putting back shots, but he could be a little bit more perimeter oriented as a big potentially. And we'll have to see with Luka Garza if he can actually reach his full potential. Was a star in college with the Iowa Hawkeyes, comes into the league, feels like the Timberwolves and Pistons were both high on him. The Celtics have inquired on Luka Garza in the past, so Luka Garza's had trade suitors before, which is always great when a team wants to trade for you. And it seems like teams have been high on him. He just never quite received the rotation minutes, and it was always on, particularly the Minnesota Timberwolves, who always had great bigs in front of him. And you mentioned two of them, Nas Reed and Rudy Gobert, but you have to think years ago too with Carl Anthony Towns,
yeah.
him as well in Minnesota. So all those bigs were in front of the those bigs were in front of Luka Garza, and it's possible Luka Garza in Boston makes his way into the rotation and starts to up his value as a player and a producer in the NBA. Because a couple of teams have been high on him before, but he hasn't quite received those rotation minutes in Boston. It's very, very possible looking at the big man
Totally.
rotation, he's going to receive those minutes next season. But this is not a signing that's going to move the needle in any way for the Celtics. It's just another player you're bringing in, and you're hoping to boom from. I mean, he's on a minimum contract right now. There's zero risk to this deal whatsoever, and you're hoping in the long run this is a deal that booms for you if you're the Celtics, and all of a sudden in the next 2 seasons you're potentially paying say a top 10 guy on your roster the minimum salary like they were with Sam Hauser years
Yeah.
before, like they were with Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett before he moved on, right? I mean, let's face it, Luke Cornett was on a $2 million deal. He was essentially the lowest even on the total poll of who was who was paid on the Celtics. Luke Kornet was near the bottom, but we all knew Luke Kornet was a top 10 player on the Celtics. He
Totally.
got his rightful worth this summer with the San Antonio Spurs. Everybody go check that video out
Go
as
check it out.
well.
Out right now.
But exactly, stay here right now, then go check it out, right? And a million of our other videos as well. But Luka Garza's he's going to be the Celtics are trying to maintain value out of a minimum deal at it, and they're hoping this deal booms in time from a I I was going to say relatively low risk, but let's face it, it's a no risk deal, and it's just not a needle mover for the Celtics whatsoever when it comes to the rotation. It's one of those investments in time you're hoping pays off if you're the Celtics and the fan base. They're going to know about Luka Garza from Iowa. They're going to understand, oh, Luka Garza, well, okay, maybe,
I,
but
I'm big.
ultimately, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I don't think people are getting too excited over Luka
No,
Garza,
I, I
and
I'm
that's
no.
just how the fan base operates.
I will say when I saw the tweet, I wasn't jumping out of my seat. I was shocked, if anything. I was more so shocked than I was, oh, Luka Garza, let's go. No, I was not like that. I was like, okay, interesting move. We could develop him. I'm like, where's the big splash? No big splash, but it's like
This was a little bit of a what do you want to call it? A little
a little,
little dribble, little
little confusing moment,
a
if
little
anything.
ripple
A
in
head
the
scratch.
pond. A little
Yeah,
ripple in the pond
yeah,
wasn't quite a big splash.
maybe like a rock skip, those little skips, maybe all right.
I
Let's
feel
do
like the
something like that.
vocabulary for this got to increase the vocabulary. What's the
All right,
something that
a little drip,
splashes but not
like a little
not
splat,
too heavily?
like if you grabbed a little pebble and threw it in, it's not that big rock that you're trying to throw in the lake. No, it's that those little rocks that you're throwing in. That's what it is. But over time, if you put some work into him, if you spend more time and build up some strength and maybe be able to throw that big rock out there, he could be that big rock. Who knows? The ceiling
Well,
is definitely
little
questionable.
a little sprinkle,
A little sprinkle,
little
a little sprinkle.
little I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't really like these synonyms
Totally, but
for splash. I didn't understand splash. Didn't
a
little
little driblet,
driblet.
a
Is
little
that
driblet. Like, what are we doing with Luka Garza? But
I that but I feel like that's sometimes
no, a
I would say
little
that's
harsh.
yeah, right. It's a
No,
little harsh for Luka
but
Garza because I
but
think he can
no,
be a
because
little bit into like this is an investment project, right? It's
yes,
not a
it is.
project
It's like
player like an Amari Williams or like
no,
a Max
no.
Schulger or anything like that. It's a player who's going to slot into the rotation, but not expected to make a great impact early on. But you're hoping he's age 26 and his age 26, 27, 28 season, right? And Luka Garza, let me check here. So he's 26 right now, but he will be 27 halfway through the season. His birthday is 2 days after Christmas, so December 27th, he'll turn 27. So in his age 27 and 28 seasons, right? He's here with the Celtics the next 2 years. And with that deal, I would expect the Celtics to keep him around for the next two years, unless
Oh,
he's just
totally.
throw in on a deal somewhere potentially. But that's to be foreseen later on down the line. But 26, 27, 28 years old, Luka Garza at this point in his career, you're hoping maybe unlocks a couple more tools in his
Yes.
arsenal to
It,
produce for the Celtics in the future. And again, he could be a boom player and he could be that investment that pays off later on in time. You take zero risk here. I mean, it's like a penny stock, right? It's okay, minimum contract, cool. But he could turn into a
he
player
can,
that's worth $10 million like Luke Kornet. And it's very
or
symbolic
even
that
more than
Luke
that.
Kornet is on his way out the same day Luka Garza is on his way in
Yeah.
because you're hoping the exact same thing happens with Luka Garza as it did to Luke Kornet. And Luke Kornet, this is the end of the road of value for Luke Kornet, unfortunately, where you're getting him on that $2 million deal. He's on these minimum contracts, and you're playing him as the third big in the rotation. And now he's making $10 million. The Celtics can't maintain that salary level with Luke Kornet. They let him walk, and that's the end of the value road for Luke Kornet. It started in March of 2021 and now ends in June of 2025. Meanwhile, Luka Garza, on the same exact day, Luke Kornet's road of value ends for the Celtics. Luka Garza, his potential road of value begins, and
It
who knows
does.
what day in the future
Yep,
it will be where Luka Garza either outplays that value or
doesn't live up
stay.
to it.
Well, let's face it, he could keep that value the same and just rolls on to Guangdong right after the Celtics. Right, if the value stays the same, maybe another minimum in the future. Who knows? Or maybe he's over in
But
Olympiacos.
I'm gonna
We're
say
not
this:
sure with Luka Garza.
we
It could
don't
go
know.
either way.
It's very uncertain. But I'm gonna say this: the Celtics have a very good development program. You know, they're very adamant to making players better, and I think that's what you look at with the Celtics. And I look at this, and I look. It's the right time to do this. You know, obviously, if you had the full squad, you have a great squad. Yeah, you could sign him to a minimum. You know, keep him at the back end of the roster like the Timberwolves did, and yeah, you're probably not going to get a lot of productivity out of him. However, this is a good year, being a bridge year, retooling year, to kind of slot him in there, get him experience, kind of see what his ceiling is, because he's going to get a lot of minutes for the Celtics this year, unless they go out, get a really good big man, you know, maybe Thomas Bryant, we talked about, maybe in a crazy world of DeAndre, and I don't think so, but or like
I don't even
obtain.
know if I would want
I,
Ayton.
I I don't think I would want Aiton anymore.
It's up
I
here.
saw
We've been that's been a theme of this summer to me is it's up here. Okay,
yeah,
like when some players just
no,
personality wise, mentality wise,
yeah,
not always
yeah,
the best to have in a locker room. Just saying.
no, no. And Luke Cornett was maybe Luka Garza could be that new locker room guy too, because you again we saw Porzingis fill the shoes for Marcus Smart. Porzingis is gone. Luke Cornett leaves. Luka Garza's his replacement. Maybe he could fill the shoes of Luke Cornett. Maybe be a little funny. I don't know. We don't know. But I look at this. All right, if Celtics obtain someone from a trade, maybe his time cuts back a little bit, but this is the perfect year to get him developed in a year where we need a retool for Jason Tatum and when he comes back and that championship window down the line. Because look at this, and I said this earlier too, Seamus, with when we had that Tristan Thompson squad, and that's the squad I'm going to call it. I'm going to just say our Tristan Thompson squad because he was our starting center when Robert Williams was out. When we were in that era, that was kind of what we hoped to be. And we talked about this earlier on CTW Live. We hope to be in an era where we have those pieces and can make them, flip them for trade assets, and have a very good kind of I want to say like a Pistons team. You know, they have a lot of rotation guys, you know, and it's not like prime players, but it's a lot of guys that, you know, like it's like, for example, like Franco said earlier, like three George Niangs, you know, it's like those type of players we want, you know. But if you look at that, you rebuild, and then that's what's going to get you to that championship window. And can Luka Garza develop into a Luke Cornett? Again, Seamus, let's pull this up. It's kind of a similar pattern. Obviously, you see Luke Cornett a little more, but again, who knows what the ceiling is for Luka Garza? I'm interested to see. I feel like there could be a lot of potential behind Luka Garza. I really do. He's coming into Beantown, and I'm telling you, I really think we could develop him. If not, might flip him at some point, but I think this is a very good year to try to develop him into becoming who knows what he could become into, but hopefully something good. But what are your thoughts, Seamus?
And I want to mention this with Luka Garza. The sample size for Luka Garza is very small. 124 games played in the regular season for Luka Garza in his 4-year NBA career. So 124 games in the regular season in 4 years, 12 playoff games played and 22 G League games played. So 22 G League games, 12 NBA playoff games and 124 regular season games in the NBA. So very small sample size for Luka Garza in his 4 years in the league since 2021. But that's also part of the upside with him is he's a little bit of an unknown entity. He hasn't really proven himself, hasn't really made his way into a rotation yet. But you do look at some of the circumstances meeting him in the early portion of his career. What's impressive is he was able to stay on the Timberwolves roster, make those rosters 3 years in a row. He was on Detroit's roster his first year, and Detroit complete mess. Let's just face it. They were a complete mess back then, and they were and they were bringing in the number one overall pick, Cade Cunningham, that season with Luka Garza that year. But the 3 years afterwards, right, all with the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Timberwolves kept him on their roster. So there's something there. Again, the interest with the Pistons, the Timberwolves, even the Celtics in the past has always been there, but he's never made his way into a rotation, never earned a rotation spot, hasn't proven himself as a rotation player in the NBA yet. But that's what makes this upside for Luka Garza so intriguing is the the sample size is very low, and if you up the ante a little bit on Luka Garza, give him some real minutes, give him a rotation spot, right? Because sometimes with players, did they earn it or was it circumstance, right? Because I look at Luka Garza, you can say, oh well, he didn't earn his spot. That could be very well true, but it's also circumstance of who's in front of him, right? Carl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, Nas
Yeah,
Reed. You could even count in Julius Randle into that mix because Luka Garza could be that small ball. He could be that five, or even
four.
play in a lineup where he's more of a bigger four, right?
Yeah,
That's where Luka Garza could play as well. So there is circumstance involved within Luka Garza's career where you go, well, maybe it wasn't him not earning a spot; it was the circumstances on the roster of
yeah,
other
totally.
guys just earning it over him. And that's where I look at the Celtics situation now. And you mentioned it, Griffin. This could be the perfect season where Luka Garza comes in a pretty weak center rotation. I don't project right now the center rotation is going to be all that great for the Celtics because there just aren't many avenues right now for the Celtics to upgrade their center rotation, and it's terrible. It's Tillman, it's Kata, it's Luka Garza, it's Amari Williams, and I a trade could be on the horizon with the Celtics to go out and get a center. I'll say that to bolster that rotation just a little bit, but ultimately the center rotation is looking a little weak. And barring some major moves, a couple of moves, the center rotation is not going to be as robust next year as it was last season with five bigs. We were talking about Kata, Tillman, Kornet, Horford, and Porzingis. I mean, think, wow, Porzingis, Horford, and Kornet could be all out the door. It could be all out the door by the time next season rolls around. But regardless, those the center rotation last year was pretty robust within the Celtics organization. Next year, however, maybe not so much. And the Celtics, from that standpoint, uh, might have some minutes to hand out to Luka Garza, who may have a chance to prove himself within the Celtics rotation and in Boston the way he didn't really get to do in Detroit and Minnesota. So there's certainly some upside within the Luka Garza signing here that the Celtics see and they like. And it's not a signing that's going to move the needle for the Celtics in the short term, but in the long term, it's a long-term investment move for the Celtics. You
It is.
sign this player, get him into your building, give him a couple minutes, get him with your developmental staff, and have them work with him over time on certain aspects of his game that we saw players in the past add. Well, I mean, guard, forward, big, they're all trying to add different things to their games, but particularly with you know how great the Celtics development team is. If Luka Garza can come into the building and replicate some of the same production and work we've seen out of players like Nehemias Queta, Luke Kornet, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, going from zero assets to whoa, teams around the league actually want him. That,
Yeah,
that Luka Garza, that pathway is certainly available for him, and that's what the Celtics are banking on in the future. But this is not again, it's not a needle moving deal right now. People are going to be excited over, but it may be a deal later on down the line, say 2 years from now, that people go, yeah, that was a pretty good signing for the Boston Celtics. And you never know, 2 years from this date, right? June 30th, 2027, we could be sitting here going, oh, Luka Garza signs a 4 year, $40 million deal with the Spurs. And it's the same thing as Luke Cornett, right? Same ordeal
or
as
he's
Luke Cornett
eligible
or
for extension
another
with the
another team,
Celtics.
right? The Rockets
Yeah,
or the Mavericks or whoever out
no,
there.
but
It
no,
could be the same
yeah,
ordeal with Luka Garza. I'm just
it's
saying.
it totally could. But I look at this and it's like it's questionable. Or we could look at this and be like, oh, well, he's playing overseas. Like you could go at both routes, but I ultimately think this is the perfect year to do it. You're in a retooling year where he potentially, and you said about those minutes, Seamus, he potentially could be playing 82 games this season and be his minutes could be upwards to 25 minutes a game. You don't
What
know. You
you
we
know
really
what's
We
What's
really don't know.
also interesting about Luka Garza is at multiple different levels, he's outplayed his initial assessment of value. So he comes into college, he's ranked 93rd in the recruiting class, the top 100, right? He's ranked 93rd. He becomes the best player in college basketball. So he goes from 93rd essentially in college basketball to, let's face it, he was the best player in college basketball. So let's see, I believe he won the Wooden Award. Which season was that here? Luka Garza. So that was in 2021. So Luka Garza won the John R. Wooden Award in 2021. And Luka Garza, his career at Iowa. So he outplayed his recruiting rank. And the Wooden Award, folks, is basically like the MVP for college basketball. So he won the Wooden Award in college, and he was a college basketball star at Iowa. And just looking at his Iowa game log real quick, because uh, he did put up quite a bit of work at Iowa with the Hawkeyes. So just going into his stat sheet here with the Iowa Hawkeyes. So Luka Garza at Iowa played 4 years there. So he played from Luka Garza coming from a generation that doesn't exist anymore, right? The generation that played multiple years at the same school. Does it ever happen anymore, Griffin? I mean, nowadays you see Amari Williams. I believe Amari Williams went from Drexel to Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. So even a guy like him went from one university to the next. But Luka Garza playing all 4 years, and let's face it, he's a 4 year college kid too. That is something you don't see too often anymore with NBA players is 4 year. Yeah, so Amari Williams, Drexel University before he was at Kentucky. So but we see that a lot with every single college player now. The transferring in college basketball, the NIL system has just
Mhm.
thrown a wrench into every. I shouldn't say thrown a wrench, but definitely reformed the whole system.
Totally.
But Luka Garza, 4 years at Iowa, spent his freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior season at Iowa. Was ranked 93rd in his recruiting class, became the Wooden Award winner, right, in college. So he basically goes from 93rd ranked to the MVP of college. And then by the time he gets to the pros, right, he's a 4 year college guy. So he comes into the pros as a little bit older of a player. He's picked 52nd overall by the Detroit Pistons in the second round, 52nd overall. Yet he's here 4 years later signing a minimum deal with the Boston Celtics, who have legitimate interest in Garza after spending 3 years with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, to me, even though he hasn't done much in his NBA career yet, he's still outperformed his 52nd overall
Totally.
pick status, because we typically see with some of these 50 plus overall picks or even second round picks, they don't last in the league very long. It might be 1, 2 years, might not even, some of these draft and stash players don't even get to the league.
No.
So up to this point, so Luka Garza, he's outplayed his 93rd overall rank at Iowa, became the John R. Wooden Award winner. And then in the pros, he's picked 52nd overall by the Pistons. And now all of a sudden, he's 4 years into the league, spent 3 years with the same team, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and now a winning organization in the Boston Celtics actually want Luka Garza, willing to sign him to a minimum deal, willing to add him into the big man rotation. And now Luke Kornet provided the path for what Luka Garza could be in the future. And I'll say this: he's that Luka Garza has outplayed his rank and his assessment of value at each level. High school into college, college into pros, and now the pros with the first couple of teams here. We'll see what happens with the Boston Celtics moving forward if he can do it yet again. But that's the precipice of where Luka Garza is at is is really outplaying that assessment of value again. He's done it at each level. Now he's going to be asked to do that with the Boston Celtics. Pretty
No,
amazing stuff here.
it really is. And he's a player that I feel like we can look back at this and be like, wow, I what a move by Brad. He's a guy, obviously, as you said, Seamus, that the Celtics have kept an eye on. So he's a guy where you would have rather him at this point in time be like, oh, we'll take him as a 15th piece on a roster. But
I
for
think
you.
he could be more than a 15th
Yeah,
piece.
maybe like, but like a bench piece where you want to stash.
I'm looking at like 10, 11,
Yeah,
12
okay,
range,
like
maybe
around there.
a little
But
around that, right? Oh, 10, 11, 12, right? That's where you
yeah,
where I'd want him slotted in, right? That I
yeah,
wouldn't 15 is
a little harsh.
reserved for the, the
Harsh.
JD Davisons of the world, the Jordan Walsh,
So
unfortunately.
that
Those guys at the bottom of the roster, unproven as well,
yeah,
younger,
no, yeah,
let's face it.
with Luca though, this is a guy where you don't want him too high up, but this is a great year. Again, I'm gonna say it, he could develop. And this is the year to do it. And this is the year that he could change into the player that he's destined to be and that the Celtics destined him to be. And the NBA just wants to see him be. So this could be a good year for Luka. But any final thoughts about Celtics signing Luka? Celtics did sign Luka today.
Well, that's the headline. The Celtics sign Luka. So next season, Luka, Jalen Brown, and then Tatum comes back. So
Tatum.
Tata,
It's a late.
Nemias Tata.
It's 1 a.m. for me. So
Well,
uh,
yeah, just past midnight for me. So happy July, Griffin. Happy July.
happy July
June is
1st.
now over. June is now over. July is now upon us. A new month,
A new
and
month and
oof, a
new
lot of
journey.
things changed for the Celtics in June. A lot of
Yes.
things.
Well, with that being said, new member of the Celtics, welcome Luka Garza. But with that being said, you guys, make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified every time we upload. Again, this was craziness. Luka Garza now signing to the Boston Celtics. So we will keep you guys covered every single time that breaking news happens. And stay tuned. So again, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys with the next one. Peace, guys.